Before we get started today, we got a bit of a trigger warning for you. This episode includes references to sexual assault. We don't go into depth about it, but we do mention it as it is a part of the plot of the movie. Between the 17th and 19th centuries, the West African kingdom of Dahomey became very powerful by conquering key cities on the Atlantic coast and becoming a major supplier to Europeans looking to trade for slaves. The Dahomey also had an all-women regiment of soldiers known as the Agoje, who were fierce warriors. The general of the Agoje, Naniska, played by Viola Davis, feels conflicted about her nation's involvement in the slave trade and is attempting to urge the king to consider less barbaric trade practices. Between her duties counseling the king, leading the army, and contemplating the choices she's made along the way, Naniska bears a heavy load on her journey to become the Woman King. I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm leaving the theater. Check. This is Ronald, and I am leaving the theater after seeing The Woman King. The Woman King, written by Dana Stevens, directed by Gina Prince-Bythewood, starring Viola Davis, Thuso Mbedu, Lashana Lynch, Sheila Atim, and John Boyega. For a complete list of the cast, check out the show notes. I am not here by myself. I am here with Viola Davis superfan.
Am I?
I don't know.
I like her, but it's Nicole.
I'm back once again with Nic Hill. Okay, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so I really love action. I love hand-to-hand combat. I want to see Black women, I train, so that's cool to see Black women like going so hard. I think that because you never see Black women in these kind of movies, I forgot that Black women warriors are going to be dealing with a lot of other things.
Correct.
And so that added an intense layer of heaviness to it. So I enjoyed it, but it was so much more emotional than I intended to be on this Thursday night.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the movie mostly, and I'm going to jump in here in a minute. But there's a reveal, and we'll talk about that after the credits, and we'll talk about a lot of the spoilery stuff after the credits. I thought it was a good movie. I thought Gina Prince-Bythewood, you might know her from her most famous movie, The Old Guard, which is available on Netflix.
Oh, I was going to say Love and Basketball.
What's that?
Oh my God, why did you say The Old Guard? But The Old Guard is good.
I'm joking. Of course, we know her from Love and Basketball, her greatest film. And if I'm not mistaken, it might be her first film, which, I mean, if you can get out the gate making your first film your best film, that's actually a high standard if that's your first movie. Yeah. The movie, I thought it was good. I thought the action was good. I thought the acting was good. I definitely think that it has some flaws. And I think, and there'll be a lot of stuff that I say, especially after the credits. Those of you that have Patreon, you will definitely hear those thoughts. But I think for the most part, what I was watching in front of me, I had a lot of thought. I had a lot of comparisons in my mind to two other movies, The Last Samurai and The Northman. Mostly because I think, and also Braveheart. And mostly because I think The Northman is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. But it came out earlier this year, and white dudes were going crazy over it. They're just like, wow, this is just Norse. Oh my God, this is great. Look at this. And I watched it and said, I don't think we needed another one of these. And then I walked into The Woman King and saw this, and I was like, oh, we've never had this. We've had Black Panther, which is a Marvel film, and it is not this. I think a lot of people won't realize that, especially for Black folks, for the Black community, to have something like this that is set in Africa, that is showing the wealth of Africa, and is showing like historically the involvement in the slave trade and being conflicted about the slave trade. These are all things that we never get to see in the movie. And for all of that, that was great for me. What did you think about those elements?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really beautiful. It's always very beautiful to see Africa. You know, it's hard because we're never going to see it outside the context of white people.
Correct.
So that's a bummer. But it was nice. The little bits that we got to see, there was just like family drama. Like when I was like, oh, this reminds me, I love period movies. Pride and Prejudice is one of my favorites. So in the beginning, when it's just like dealing with like the husband stuff, I was like, whoa, this feels so... They dealt with this too. That was really cool. So those elements of it, beyond just the wealth of Africa, it's really cool to see just what interpersonal daily life was like. And, you know, we don't look upon the Dahomey and like all that stuff. Like that was really cool. And it felt really good to see that. And it felt really good to see like people having fun and community. Like they were just, it wasn't just when they were behind the walls in their space and they were safe. I love to see how they celebrated together. I thought that was really fun. And the little palace intrigues and stuff like that. It was good.
Yeah, I think all of that was great. There was a lot of elements they put in this. I remember sitting there thinking, just like it was the same way with the same type of world building that they did in Black Panther, in that there's all these little things happening that you don't really expect of an African nation, and it's mostly because we don't get to see it that often. So it was kind of cool. And you're right, I didn't even think of the comparisons that we get to see when we look at it like in a period piece or in a medieval film or in Game of Thrones or in any of that other stuff where you get to hear exposition coming from like from off characters. Now, I mean from basically third, fourth, fifth level characters that we're talking about. People that aren't even main side characters. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't know, I couldn't say that. With all that in mind, we did not say what the plot of the movie was. And just quickly, in Africa, there's this conflict going on. There's one nation called the Dahomey Nation. They have a group of fierce women warriors who are working hard to keep Dahomey in power, actually to keep peace in Dahomey, honestly.
Yeah, and to protect the king. They're the King's Guard.
Exactly. They're the King's Guard. So they're called the Agiome. Agoje. Which, I mean, y'all can just go ahead and email me if I got it wrong. I'm sorry. Like, I'm already sorry. Yeah. So, and they're very fierce, and we're introduced and we're partially told the story through the eyes of Viola Davis, who is the general of the Agioje and the leader of the King's Guard, and through a new recruit to the Agioje. Her name is Nawe. What did you think of both Nawe and what did you think of the storytelling in the movie?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really beautifully told story, and it really focuses on the truth of what would happen to a bunch of women, to women when you are in a slave trade, when you're at war. These are the stories that are so often, I mean, they're just, you never told. I don't know if they had led with that, if people would even go see it. I don't know that I would see it if they had led with that, because it is really, it's important to see, it's important to tell, but as a woman, you're going to be dealing with a lot of other things if your country is at war and if your country is selling people. And so I think that the storytelling was really, I think ultimately she did want to, Gina, and you know, the story is about women in war and women in slavery and what it means to be a woman and need to navigate a world that is controlled by men. And so even the women who aren't fighting and who are the king's concubines or whatever, his wives, they are also needing to navigate power and figure out how to move in that way. And so I think it did a really good job of demonstrating the different ways in which women need to move in order to survive in a men's world. Sometimes you can fight with your body and your force and stuff, and sometimes you have to use your mind. And I thought that was really, really interesting. I think, you know, the thing that was hard about it is I think we spent a lot of time looking at really beautiful things instead of advancing the plot. But it's because you never seen these things before, so it's the constant tug of Black storytelling.
I agree. I think the one thing I was going to say was like I have two big issues. One is the pacing. And I think you're right. I think there were times in which they were kind of like, they weren't 100% sure with the sequence of the movie, because there's stuff that I feel like happens that I'm like, I don't know if that needed to happen then, or I don't know if that should have happened like that. Or even if we go to the ending felt very Lord of the Rings-ish, where there was about 3 of them, where it was just like, you could have ended right there, and then it kind of goes a little longer. I was like, well, you could have ended, okay, and then I was like, okay, well, that's where he ended. I'm like, and it was fine. Like, I wasn't mad at how it ended, but I had already felt like I had been emotionally satisfied in the film, and I felt like there were several instances in which it kept lingering. There's a death scene in which a slaver is murdered by slaves, which I was fine with, but which is weird because we watched what was going to happen. We knew what was going to happen. We were shown that it happened, and then the camera lingered on it afterwards, and I felt like, oh, that was. I don't know if I needed that. Like, you could have just ran away and I would have like, oh, I know what's happening next. And I would have been fine with that. And I wondered about that. So there was a few things that I felt like went a little longer than they needed to. And we'll talk about one other thing after the credits because it involves one of the reveals. But there was, like, pacing wise, I think that's where my biggest issues were.
Okay, so there was 2 issues. One, I don't think they had enough story for the length of movie they wanted to make. And so that's like, I think where we just were like, let's linger then.
Yeah.
And then 2, I think that there were times in which they wanted us to revel in the satisfaction of revenge.
Yes.
And I do think that is really difficult in Black films like this because I think what is the most satisfying is like you think it would be the revenge on white people, but it's really them getting away.
Yes.
And getting to go back behind the palace walls and just be together.
Yes.
And be left alone.
Yes.
That is the thing I would, if we were going to linger on anything, I would much rather linger on that than dead white people, which I just don't care.
Yes. Okay, I think.
I love to see them take them out. Because they were fighting and they were brave and they were fierce and they did what they trained to do.
Yeah.
But then to kind of be like, I think they wanted us to feel that emotional payoff.
Yeah.
But honestly, the thing that is hard about this one too is I had this problem in Black Panther when the men were tripping and then the women got them in line in that big fight scene.
Yeah.
It's not that satisfying to see Black people fight Black people.
Yes.
That was hard for me.
Yes.
That was really hard.
I agree. I think there was a part in there where I think like I kind of allowed myself to just watch the movie at those scenes. But you're right. I remember there was a time when my brain said out loud, and I kind of suppressed it. When my brain said out loud was like, these are Black people fighting Black people. Yeah. And I'm like, I was like, all right, okay. And then, do you know what I tried to suppress that part by saying, okay, I want more of these movies. And there's plenty of movies about white people fighting white people. So I'm like, I guess if we're talking about equity, I'm like, then I guess I want to see more of things where there is a conflict between Black people. It's not a thing. For instance, there was the Western movie that came out, The Harder They Fall, I think it was, on Netflix.
Oh, yeah.
In which I was actively rooting for the antagonists in that movie simply because I liked them better than I liked the protagonists in the movie, but everybody was Black. And I really didn't think the motivation of the protagonist was that much better than the...
We're tripping in that movie. I mean, this is not about that, but oh my God.
Yes,
when they let that girl go back, I mean, what are we doing?
Yeah.
It made no sense.
And that was your review of The Harder They Fall. You're welcome. You got a bonus review in there.
What are you guys doing?
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think you're right. There were parts in there that made it difficult. And I want to go deeper into the reveal. So we're going to cut this part short. And I know a lot of you are going to be like, oh, wait, keep going. No, join the Patreon because we'll keep going. But what is your rating? What would you give it?
Oh, man. Okay, jumping to that. Was there anything else I wanted to say? It doesn't matter. I guess I'll say it afterwards. Oh, okay. So my rating is a 4, although I can't watch it again. It is emotionally really heavy. As a woman, it is just like it hits home. I had some challenges with the depiction of Black men, with the only good one being the half-white one.
Yes.
That was big issue for me.
Yeah. Like I kept leaning over to Nick and saying, Black men are the worst.
Right, and it's like, I think that they realized halfway through, because I realized halfway through, that I'm so sorry. Now I'm going into a whole thing. And this is the last thing I'll say.
That's fine.
I think that they realized halfway through that it was like, oh, we've only Tyler Perry style, shown you like dark skin terrorists. Like, they are just monsters. And so then they made that one black guy who was silent at all times, the one dark-skinned black man.
Yep.
They let him have a long scene where he was doing something heroic.
Yes.
Because up until then, the literal only good black man we saw was the one who was half white and from Brazil. That's the problem.
Okay. This is why I enjoy doing these with you, because you really did. Now that I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, yeah, that's annoying, because like every depiction we have of dark-skinned black men was either they were the bad guy, they were weak.
Oh, right, exactly. Yeah.
Or they were, the bad guy, or they were weak. Period. Those were the two.
And when they were bad, they were so bad.
Yeah, they were bad. They were evil.
Yeah, we saw them doing evil things.
Yeah, despicable things.
Horrible. So it's just like either they were in chains or they were monsters who you want dead.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
So, but I think that it's still, in terms of like representation, I think it's important. In terms of storytelling that we haven't heard, I think it's important, and being the first.
Yeah.
As a I just like love, I wish there were way more fight scenes. There were not enough fight scenes, but I loved when they were fighting.
Yeah.
Especially when the camera focused on them, because they're beautiful and strong.
Yeah.
So it's a 4 because it is a beautiful story, and because I'm super biased. I mean, I'm sure I'm sure if if everyone was white, if they did the exact same thing but they were white, I probably wouldn't give it a 4. But I can recognize that I just appreciate being privy to the story. I haven't seen it. I'm going to be thinking about this for a long time.
I give it, it was funny. It was a 4 for a while, and then it dropped down to a 3.75 for me, which is like, not to say, because I agree with you. I think this is essentially like my spirit is telling me this is a 4-star movie. Like, the most logical and critical parts of me are saying that I think there were parts of it, and especially, and we'll get into it more, but there were parts of it that I was like, I don't know why you did that. You didn't need to do that. And I felt like it wasn't anything gratuitous or bad, but I mean, on the same note, I feel like if we're grading on the same scale that we grade other movies, I feel like I just want to make sure that I'm like, all right, this was great. But if I'm like going to go to movie critic school and talk to anybody else about it, I'll be like, I can tell you what the issues with this movie were, but they were no worse than the issues that were in The Northman or Last Samurai or Braveheart.
Braveheart was like a ridiculous film.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Braveheart is ridiculous.
Yes.
It just feels good to watch it.
Yeah, and you know what? But I feel like this is that.
Yes, exactly.
You nailed it. Yes, that's what I feel about this. I feel like I felt good watching this, and I would watch it again. I feel the same way you did, where I'm like, well, do I need to watch it again? But if like my mom and sister wanted to go see it, if my dad wanted to see it, I'd go watch it again with them. If it was on at the house, I'd watch it.
The only reason I wouldn't, the heaviness of it. I think
it is heavy.
The telling a woman's story in this is inherently going to be heavy.
Yeah.
And a woman's body can be used in a lot of ways. And we got to see them choose for themselves in some cases, but we also got to see them not. And that's hard. Yeah. And it's real and it's important to tell, but it's just heavy.
Yeah, I'm going to average our scores, and I'm going to lean to your side, and we'll call it a 3.99 of 5 stars, which I think people have seen my other 3.99 movies. You're really only getting penalized like a percentage of 1 point here. But yeah, I mean, for those of you that have Patreon, jump on over to Patreon. We'll have more after the credits. But with that, Leaving the Theater is a production of Oh It's Big Ron Studios. Thomas Tyra of Bias Studios mixes the show. Thank you, Tom. Show art from Heather Wilder. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. For more information about The Woman King or Nic Hill, check out our show notes. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Oh It's Big Ron. That's at OHITSBIGRON. You can find out more about this show and other Oh It's Big Ron Studios shows by following us on Instagram at Oh It's Big Ron Studios and on Twitter at Oh It's Big Ron Stu, STEW. Leaving the Theater will be back soon. Thanks for listening. Also, Nick, thanks for coming.
Oh my God, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. Thanks for paying.
What? Paying? Yeah. Oh, okay.
What did you think?
I was like, wait, we didn't agree to a payment.
I'm not paying you for this.
Oh my God. All right.